Greetings, Iain from RTO here. Welcome to another start of another week on the channel. And we're going to kick off this week with an album ranking of the Mighty Who, one of the great rock and roll bands in the British catalogue, as they say. Formed in 1964 by Roger Daltrey, Pete Townshend, John Entwistle, and of course Keith Moon. One of the most influential rock bands of the 20th century. They have sold over 100 million records worldwide. Wow, they're just a great band. Always been a big fan of The Who. They've released 12 studio albums to date, and I don't know if we'll get any more, but we'll be looking at them. I like most of them. There's something on all the albums, but of course there are some that are different. Now, when it comes to the top three, I love them all as much as each other, but there's just one album that really does stand out for me. That doesn't mean that the others are not as good. So we'll get cracking because we have got 12. So coming in at number 12, we have got the 10th album, and it was released in 1982, and it is called Heart. It's Hard, sorry. It was the last album that featured John Entwistle, who died in 2002, and it was also the second and final album with drummer Kenny Jones. So it's Roger Daltrey on lead vocals and rhythm guitar, John Entwistle on the bass and horns and backing vocals, Kenny Jones on drums, and Pete Townshend on the guitars, of course. First track is called Anthea, classic sounding Who track. Really good track. I do like that one quite a lot. It's Your Turn, good little rocker, written by John Entwistle. Yeah, solid track. Cook's Country, it's got that signature Pete Townshend riff. And you can imagine him doing what he does on stage, jumping and hitting the chords. It's pretty good. It's Hard, the title track. It's a bit weak, although it has got a pretty good solo from Pete on that one. Dangerous. Yeah. Not a good track in my books. Just like Eminence Front, it's just lacking something. It just doesn't sound right. I've Known a War, my favourite track on the album. It's a good rock track, great vocal from Roger on this, absolutely top draw stuff from Mr. Daltrey. One Life's Enough, again a little bit flat in places. One at a Time, brass, just does not sound right. Why Did I Fall for That? It's got a nice bass line from John, but that's all I can say about that one. A Man Is a Man. I think they're running out of ideas here because it's just a bit of a filler. And Cry If You Want To. It's pretty good. It's got some nice riffs from Peter. It's solid. Okay, I do find this album a little bit strange in places. It has got a couple of really good tracks on it, but there's some tracks for me that just don't seem to be on this should be on this album. Hence why I don't play it very often. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 5.5. Okay, then coming in at number 11, we go to the 11th album now, released in 2006, Endless Wire. And it's 24 years since It's Hard, and it's the first album they've released without John Entwistle, of course. So the band that recorded this is Roger Daltrey on lead vocals, Pete Townshend on guitars, vocals, bass guitar, drums, piano, keyboards, violin, banjo, mandolin and a drum machine, which always, when you hear there's a drum machine on it, it does give you a little bit of ooh. We've gone from one of the best drummers in the world to a machine. We got John Brunrick on Hammond organ, Simon Townsend backing vocals, Pino Palladino on bass, great bass player is Pino, and Zark Starkey on drums on one of the tracks, Black Widow's Eyes. First track on this one is called Fragments, trying to recreate the intro to Baba O'Reilly here, and it just fails. It just doesn't sound right. A Man in a Purple Dress. It's a nice track. Roger sounds great on this. You know, considering his voice is altered like most singers, it's a pretty good trick. Mike Post's theme is nass. Worst thing I've ever heard Roger Daltrey sing in my life. I just don't like it. In the Ether, again, very weak song. It's a little lacklustre. It just doesn't sound like The Who for me. Black Widow's Eyes, really good track. One of the better tracks on this album. I don't mind that one. Some great drumming from Zach Starkey on that one. 2000 Years, nice track. I love the mandolins on this. It's got that Led Zeppelin feel to it. When John Paul Jones used to put mandolins on their tracks, I really like that track. God Speaks to Marty Robbins, just lacks something. The guitar's alright, but the rest of the track is just a bit memorable for me. It's Not Enough, again, one of the better tracks on the album. Sounds like it. This is something from The Who. It's not too bad. You Stand By Me. It's 1 minute and 36 seconds of people just singing and an acoustic guitar. It's not very memorable. Then we get one of Pete Townshend's mini operas, and it's called Wiring Glass. Trying to create another Tommy here, or a mini Quadrophenia, and it just doesn't work. It's a bit disjointed. It doesn't flow very well. It's boring and abandoned in places. It's not very good at all, unfortunately. Okay, a bit of a mixed bag here. There is, again, some good tracks on here, and some of the tracks, Roger's voice is a bit groggy. The mini rock opera shouldn't have been put on because it just didn't do anything. Too disjointed. But some of the other songs are well structured, and I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay then, coming in at number 10, we have the 12th and probably the final album from The Who, and it's just called Who. Again, first album in 13 years. So on here, Who are now just Roger Daltrey and Pete Townshend, but the people working on here, Pino Palladino's back on the bass, Zark Starkey does the drums, Benom Tench on organ and mellotron, Simon Townsend on percussion, Jerry Wonronka does some drumming as well, so does Carla Azar, Matt Chamberlain, Gus Sheffrit on bass, Andrew Snowniek on acoustic guitar, Gordon Giltrap, yes, does acoustic guitar on one track as well. So the first track on here is called All This Music Must Fade. Just sounds like a classic Who song. Great vocal from Roger. Some of the guitar work in this is pretty good. Ball and Chain, great driving riffs here from Pete Townshend. It's a really strong track. I Don't Want to Get Wise, a little bit different, a little bit away from the classic sounding Who, but I think it's a good track. Then we get Detour. It's all right, not one of my favourites. Beads on a String, must have been done on a Friday. It's not very good. Ground Zero, this reminds me of Love Rain Over Me, which is pretty good. I like that track. Street Song, not too bad. I'll Be Back, not too keen on this one, although it's got a little groovy little guitar riff from Pete. Break the News, solid track. Rockin' in Rage, my favourite track on the album, very classic Who this is, great stuff. She Rocked My World, some nice guitar work on this from Gordon Giltrap. Nice that he's working with the Who. This Gun Will Misfire, another really good track that really goes back to the, tries to go back to the heydays. Got Nothing to Prove. Again, it's got that 60s vibe to it. It's a really good track. And Danny and My Ponies just is awful. I think this is a pretty solid album, in all honesty. And if this is the last album, it's not a bad effort to go out on. It's got some great playing from Pete on this, and I do like listening to this album. Even though there's a couple on there I'll go, ooh dear. But I do like this. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 9, we have the 9th album released in 1981, Face Dances. It's the first album to be released without Keith Moon, who died 3 years previously. So they brought in ex-Faces drummer Kenny Jones. So we've got Roger Daltrey on lead vocals, Pete Townsend on the guitars, John Entwistle on bass, and Kenny Jones drums. Opens up with the great You Better You Bet. I love this track. I remember hearing it for the first time and I thought, wow, the Who are back. This is absolutely brilliant. I love this track. Went and got the single, you know, just love this song. Simple as. Don't let go the coat. Good song. Very good vocal from Roger on that one. Cachet, Cachet. Classic sounding Who. Still got that great John Entwistle bass on it. Really good. The Quiet One. Love this. It's a great track, some great riffs. Kenny's drumming on this is pretty good. You know, he had big boots to fill and he does a good job on that one. Did You Steal My Money? One of the tracks I'm not keen on this album. It's just something about it. How Can I Do It Alone? Another fantastic track with a great vocal from Roger. Daily Records, nice little medley. Some great guitar work on this one from Pete. Again, then we got You, great driving riffs, great bass line from John. That classic John Entwistle bass line drives the song along nicely. Another Tricky Day, very good track again. Just solid Who music. For me, this one's probably the last of the really good Who albums. And they sort of, until the 12th album, The Who, the ones in between are not as good. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, then coming in at number 8, we go to the 3rd album from 1967, The Who, Sell Out. Now this is a concept album structured as a collection of unrelated songs interspaced with fake commercials and public announcements, including the second track, Heinz Baked Beans. So this is the classic lineup: Roger, John, Pete and Keith. Now they're all Roger, Keith, and from now on. So these are just the great Who albums. So the first track on here is Armenia City in the Song. This is a good song. It's quirky, it's catchy, quite like that one. Heinz Baked Beans. It's just a bit out there, isn't it? Then we get Marianne with the Shaky Hand. It's alright, it's not the best track on the album. Rondo, I love Pete's guitar work on this. This is terrific. This is him at his best. Tattoo, a nice little song with some lovely harmonies. You've got Rogers doing this lead singing and Pete's harmonies sound really good. Then we got a track that's called Our Love Was, or retitled Our Love Was is on the original US LP. I don't know. It's alright, I think. Then we get the brilliant I Can See for Miles, one of my favourite tracks by The Who. I like that a lot. There's not much you can say about that. It's just one of the classic songs. Can't Reach You, and re-entitled on various issues I Can't Reach You. It's a pretty good track. Mediac, retitled Spotted Henry on the US. One of those pointless things from John Entwistle. Relax. Very short track, but a very good track from the boys. Great drumming from Mr. Moon. Salastingi, not the best track on the album. Sunrise, I like this, it's got some nice pastiche guitar on there. Rail 1 and 2, just recalled Rail on a 1995 issue. I'd say this is the start of the longer classic Who tracks. This is certainly an interesting album, isn't it? I do love the jingles in between. They do sound like the jingles you got on pirate radio, and I'm a big fan of pirate radio. It's a little bit disjointed in places, but there are some good songs on this. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 7, we got the second album, released in December 1966, A Quick One. Track 1 is Run, Run, Run. Love this track. Some lovely harmonies in this. That's what I liked about The Who. The harmonies were always good. A well-structured song. Love it. Then we get the infamous Boris the Spider, a song from John Entwistle. It's just a great bass from John. Silly song, but with a great bass line. I Need You. This is one of Keith Moon's. Stick to the drumming, Keith. Whiskey Man. Great 60s song. John Entwistle, again, that bass. He wrote it, so he wrote. The bass line is pretty awesome from John. You can just imagine him playing that one. Heatwave. This is a Martha and Vandellas track. It's not a bad version of it, to be quite honest. Then we got Cobwebs and Strange. This is an instrumental. You just wonder what was going on in Keith Moon's brain. The drumming on this is just fantastic. He was one of the greatest drummers ever in my books. Don't Look Away, a really good track. Very similar to what the Beatles were doing at the time, but it sounds good. See My Way, not bad. Solid 60s pop song. Sad About Us. Now this is my favourite track on here. It's one of my favourite sort of deep cut tracks from The Who. It's just something about it. It's structured well. It's great singing. Some great drumming. Solid as you like. A quick one, While Is Away. Not a bad track. Solid. And then we get Batman. Yeah. I've heard some interesting versions of this tune. And this one. He is. Okay, made very similar to the debut album. I don't think it's as good as the debut album, but there's some really strong tracks on here. And I do like to play this album, so I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8.2. Okay, then coming in at number 6, talking of the debut album that came out in 1965, My Generation. Got some interesting people on here joining them. We've got Nicky Hopkins on the piano, the Ivy League backing vocals, Perry Ford on piano, and Jimmy Page on lead guitar on Bald Headed Woman. First track is Out in the Street. Great opening tracks and great riffs on here. I do like this track. Great bass line as ever. I Don't Mind, which is a James Brown number. Great version of this James Brown song. Pretty good. The Good's Gone. Pete's guitar work in this is brilliant, especially at the beginning, and another fantastic bass line from John Entwistle. Then we get La 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 Lies. Great song, some great piano work here from the legendary Nicky Hopkins. Played with everybody in the 60s. If you wanted some piano, this is the man they got. Much Too Much. I've never been keen on that one. I think the vocal's terrible. Then we get the classic My Generation. It's a classic song, but it's one of them songs, if I never hear it again, I won't get upset. Sorry folks, That's how I feel about it. But it's still got that legendary bass line from John Entwistle. Then we get another classic from the band, The Kids Are Alright. Brilliant track. What more can you say about that one? Then we get another James Brown song, Please, Please, Please. No, I don't think Roger carried it off like the great James Brown. Simple as. It's Not True. Not a bad song. One of the best tracks on the album that's not one of the hits. Love it. I'm a Man, a Bo Diddley classic. They do a pretty good version of it. A Legal Matter. A good song. This is, you could see where Pete was going and the ideas he had. It's really good. But my favourite track on this album is the last track, The Ox. Absolutely brilliant. You had the engine room of The Who, John Entwistle, Keith Moon, absolutely fantastic. It's just a joy to listen to these two playing off each other. It is just fantastic. That was the last track. Like most legendary bands, their first albums always a mixture of their own stuff and some covers. The covers are okay, but the tracks that are on there that they wrote are pretty good, and you could see where they were going. And I do like playing this album mainly for the Ox, and I do like My Generation and all the hits on it. It's just some good old-fashioned 60s rock that was different to the Beatles and different to the Stones. This was really heavy for the time, I thought, this album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.4. Okay, then coming in at number 5, we got a 1975 now. This is the 7th album, and it's Who by Numbers. Track 1 is Slip Kid. I do struggle with this song. It's not a particular favourite of mine. How Much I Booze. This is a bit different for me. It's a more of a funky country track, and it's really good. For some reason, I like this track. When I look at it, I shouldn't like this, but I do like it. I think it's that funky bass line that really helps. Then we get the classic Squeeze Box. Great track, always like that one. Dreaming from the Waist. An average song. Doesn't do much for me, but it sounds on. Imagine Under the Sun. It seems to meander a little bit towards the end. Then we get Success Story. My favourite track on this album. I love the upbeat from Keith. The drums are good. Some great twangy guitar from Pete. Excellent. They're in Love. Some bands just don't suit ballads, and there is one of them. I just don't like that track at all. Blu-ray and Grey. Quirky little track. It's a little bit different, but it's good. How Many Friends? Again, a bit of a filler track, that one. Not for me. In a Hand or a Face? One of the best tracks on the album. It's just classic Who. Sounding good. Solid album on this one. Got some classics on here. Squeeze Box and The Success Story. It's an album that I do play a lot, and I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay then, coming at number 4, we've got the 8th album, released in 1978, and sadly it was the last album to feature Keith Moon, who sadly died 3 weeks after its release, and it is Who Are You? First song on here is called New Song. I like the guitar riff and the bass line, and we've got a bit of synth. First time you've heard a little bit of synthy sound on a Who song, and I think it worked okay. Had enough. Oh dear, that synthy sound just didn't sound right on this one. 905, I like this song. Very catchy, one of John Entwistle's songs. Pretty good. Sister Disco, very different for the band. They were sort of experimenting with different sort of music. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's my favourite track on the album. Music Must Change. I like this one. The guitar work is good, and some great drumming from Keith Moon on that. Trick of the Light, great rocker. Do love the drums again from Keith. Absolutely top draw. Guitar and Pen. It's a little bit disjointed in places. On the whole, it's a good track. It just needs to take out the disjoint, and you've got a better track. But I do like it. Love Is Coming Down. Probably one of the worst tracks I've ever heard by The Who in my books. I just don't like it. And the last track is the brilliant Who Are You. Great track. Used for the theme of the CIS TV program. What a track to use. Yeah, a lot of people are not keen on this album. It's a bit interested. It was a bit mixed. I like it. I like the experimentation, but it just includes some two great classics on here. So I shall give this an RTO ranking of 8.8. Okay, we've reached top 3. Oh, this was hard, because these 3 albums are just mind-blowing, and when I think that the Who were really at their best on stage, in the studio. It's a tough one, this is, but I've gone with this order and I haven't mucked about with it, because if I did, I'd give myself headaches unnecessarily. So, coming in at number 3, we have the 6th album, released in 1973. It was a double album, and it's the brilliant Quadrophenia. And we've got an important people on here. We've got John Cole as the news voice on Cut My Hair, and Chris Stanton on piano. I Am the Sea. It's just loads of sea noises, so I can't really comment. The Real Me, I love this. Great rocker. Love the drums from Keith. Imagine with his octopus arms going around it. A great bass line from John. Lovely riffs from Pete. Excellent. Then we get Quadrophenia. It's an instrumental. I love this. It's a combination of rock and orchestra. It works well. Brilliant. Then we get Cut My Hair, which is a brilliant track. You got the newsreader John Curl adding to it. You got the singing. The verses are done by Pete, and the chorus is Roger. Some great guitar work, very well put together track. Then we get the Punk and the Godfather. Again, it's you got combination of Daltrey and Townsend. Verses and chorus Daltrey. The bridge is done by Pete. A great track. The best thing on this, though, is that bass line from John. It really drives the song. I Am the One. Another fantastic track. It's great riffs. Some great drumming. Great singing. What more do you need? The Dirty Jobs. An interesting song, but that keyboard is a little bit different, and it's a little bit for its time, and it actually works. Helpless Dancer. It actually includes the intro to the Kids of All Right on this, isn't it? Very clever how they brought that in, and it really is good. It's In My Head. Now, this is John Entwistle singing the chorus. He's a good singer. You know, he did a lot of the backing vocals, and I do like that track. I've Had Enough. This is all about Moon and Entwistle, the engine room. Oh, it's just great. Then we have 5:15. I've always liked this track. One of my favourite tracks by The Who. Love the horns and piano. Great combination. Works so well. Sea and Sand. One of the great vocals from Roger Daltrey. Absolutely spot on. Drowned. Again, we got horns on this. Brilliant track. Some great work from Peter on the guitar. Wonderful. Bellboy, which is in brackets Keith's theme. The only good thing about it, though, is Keith Moon's drumming. I'm not very keen on that. Dr. Jimmy, containing It's Me, John's theme. I think this is a little bit too long and it sort of loses itself. Then we get The Rock. I love this. It's an instrumental. Proves what great musicians these guys were. Really good. And then the last track is my favourite, and it's a classic, Love, Rain, Oh Me. Great track. It's just wonderful. This is an amazing album from top to bottom. You don't just put one track on, you put it on and you play it all the way through. It's a great film as well. Just one of them great albums and films of the 70s and 80s. Great stuff. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 2. The album from '69, and it's the brilliant Tommy. What can you say about this? Starts off with that overture. That's how they put all the songs together, like a big musical thing. You get all the little bits of the songs. Fantastic. That goes straight into It's a Boy. Love this track. Classic, short, some nice delicate acoustic guitar on this. 1921 again, it's just classic. Nothing wrong with this one. Amazing Journey. Roger's vocal is great. Keith Moon's drumming is awesome. Sparks, again, some lovely drumming from Keith on this. Some good guitar work as well. It's just a very, very good little instrumental. The Hawker, which is a Sonny Boy Williamson number. The words on this are great. It's just brilliant. Christmas comes next. Love the sounds of classic Who. Then it goes that weird bit in the middle, and then the rocky bit at the end. It's just really good. Cousin Kevin, the harmonies are great on this. It's great drumming from Keith. The Acid Queen, what a track. I mean, in the film Tina Turner, well, one of my favourites on the track. Love the guitar work on this. Underture, this just shows the versatile of Pete Townsend's creative mind, the musicianship of Keith and John and Peter together. They just go off on one. It's 9 minutes and 55. How much of this was improv? I don't know. It's just brilliant to listen to. Then we get to Do You Think It's All Right? It's a short little piece with some nice harmonies. Fiddle About, very short but quite heavy. Then we get the fantastic Pinball Wizard, one of the great tracks in the film, of course, Elton John. And them boots he wore are actually in our shoe museum here in Northampton. There's a Doctor, 25 seconds of nonsense. Then we get my favourite track on here. It's probably one of my favourite tracks by The Who. Go to the Mirror. Love the riffs in this from Pete. Strong, catchy tune, really good. Tommy, Can You Hear Me? It's a little short track, but some lovely harmonious singing on that. Smash the Mirror. Shame this isn't longer because it's a really good piece of music. It's only 1 minute 20. Should have been longer for me. Sensation. One of the tracks I'm not really keen on. I think it just spoils the album. But when you watch when you watch Tommy, it makes sense if you get my drift. Then we got Miracle Core. It's just 10 seconds of nothing. Sally Simpson. I love this track. Catchy little tune and a great vocal from Roger. I'm Free. Nice little track. Welcome. The spoken words from John Entwistle with them dulcet tones. Pretty cool. Tommy's Holiday Camp. Bit of nonsense here, but in the film it does make sense. It's quite a bit of a fun bit, that is. We're Not Gonna Take It. A brilliant track. Great drumming. Some great riffs from Peter. One of the classic songs by The Who. This is an album, if it hadn't have been a success, The Who were finished. They were getting a little stick from the record company. Pete went out on a limb and come out with this brilliant piece of music. It's probably one of the best double albums ever made. It's got some fine songs on here and some brilliant arrangements. I love this. I love the movie as well. and I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.5. So my number one album, people might have thought, why isn't Tommy number one? Well, I just think this is a brilliant album. Released in 1971, it's the 5th album, and it is Who's Next. Now this actually developed from an aborted mini rock opera called The Lighthouse Project, which was supposed to be the follow-up to Tommy. They cancelled the project, but they kept some of the songs. 8 of the 9 songs on Who's Next were actually from Lighthouse, actually. So joining the band here, we have got Dave Arbus on violin, Nicky Hopkins again on the piano, Al Cooper on Hammond organ, Leslie West lead does some guitar. So the first track is the classic Baba O'Reilly. What a track. Love that opening, the sequencing on the keyboards. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Dramatic drumming from Keith, of course. Top notch song to start the album. Bargain. Oh, the band are on fire with this one. Keith Moon's drumming is just all over the place. It's just octopus arms, as I used to call him. Great bass line from John. It's just great stuff. Love Ain't for Keeping. A really bluesy feel to this. Do like the bass line again. Pretty good riffs from Pete. Absolutely brilliant. My Wife. Nice rocker. This is written by John. Some great bass lines. Some of the great drums. It's one of the best songs John ever wrote, I think. The Song Is Over. Everything's good. You got some great singing. You got Pete doing the verses, Roger does the chorus. But what is good about this is Nicky Hopkins' piano on this. It is terrific. He was such a great pianist in the 60s, and he's still coming with the goods in the 70s. Getting in Tune, a great vocal from Roger, one of my favourite vocals again. Nicky Hopkins again, absolutely out of this world. Really adds texture to that song. Going Mobile, one of the gentler tracks on the album. I love the start of this, that lovely acoustic guitar. Then we get this driving bass from John, throw in a mix of some great drumming, and you've got a really strong track again. Behind Blue Eyes, pastiche start, then it ends into a rock track. The solo at the end is amazing, and some more sublime drumming from Keith. Then we got my favourite ever song by The Who. It's the last track on the album, and to me it's the best track ever they made. Who Won't Get Fooled again. I just love that keyboard start. I think it's got some of Keith's best drumming. I love the video to this, watching him play. A great vocal from Roger on this, and it's just got some classic riffing from Pete. Absolutely brilliant. It's just a classic song regardless. I just love this album. Top to bottom of quality songs from The Who. Yeah, I think it's better than Tommy. I just really do, because some of the tracks on Tommy and Quadrophenia are pointless ones, but everything on here is just perfect. I don't get tired of playing this album at all. It's just an absolutely masterpiece for me. Whether it's my opinion, I hear things, but I just love this album, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.6. So there we go, The Who. It'll be interesting what people think, because we all have our favourite albums by The Who, and at the end of the day, The Who are a great band. They're all good albums, but there's just ones we all our preferences. So there we go. Okay, I'll be back very shortly with a classic album, and we're going to look at one of my favourite bands and one of my favourite writers, poet extraordinaire, Mr. Jim Morrison, and we're going to be looking at the Doors album L.A. Woman. So join me for that. So it's a real classic day today. So bye for now.